In this binder here, we have cards from 1980 to the 2020s. We have cards in here from NASCAR, NFL, NHL, NBA, you name it, it is in here. MLB especially, it is in here. Within this binder, it's going to be a lot of diversity. It's going to be a lot of good, a lot of bad. 9 cards per sleeve. We're going to go ahead and pick a number 1 through 9. You guys will get the gist of it. Let's just go ahead and get started. All right, we're going to go ahead and open this up, mix them up. All right, we're going to pick the number 3. It'll be in the top right. Boom. J.R. Phillips, the Phoenix Firebirds designated hitter. Let's go ahead and get into it. So what's crazy about J.R. Phillips, I'm going to put in air quotes here, is that his name doesn't resemble anything towards his real name. His real name's not J.R. His name's actually Charles Gene Phillips. Thought that was just interesting. But here's a baseball card from his Midland Angels times during the 92 season. He went to Bishop Amat Memorial High School in La Puente, California. What's crazy about JR here is this man was actually supposed to be a college quarterback. JR was actually a designated hitter, like we saw in the card that we originally had in my binder, but he was also a pitcher. He was actually recruited to be a pitcher, which is why teams in college football were actually interested in this dude. D1. So Charles Gene, as we're going to call him throughout this video, JR, he elected to just take the money and went to the MLB. But from there, it's quite a bumpy road for our boy JR. So in 1988, JR was drafted by the Los Angeles Angels in the amateur draft. The Angels surprisingly drafted him in the 3rd round, which is also crazy because they were the only team interested in him as a hitter. So this is where things start to take a turn. Yes, they knew he could pitch, but they didn't want him to pitch. They wanted him to hit, so they needed to get him out into a field position, and the lefty was ready to go. So at this point in time, in 1988, he was drafted. Yeah, we know he was in the minors, bounced around. We talked about this. 1992 came around, 4 years after he was drafted. He stays in California. He's been in California his whole entire life, and he's picked up on waivers by the San Francisco Giants, where he spends the majority of his career. So he spent 4 years back and forth on the Phoenix Firebirds, which is the AAA team for the Giants here. So just keep in mind, that's 3 years of him going back and forth from the minors to the majors, and he finally gets his break in the 3rd season with the Giants. He came there in 92. He was finally there in 95 as a starter. But you guys can see right here, his lack of production in the big league forced him into the platoon with Mark Carrion before the midseason mark. This man is he's out of luck nonstop, right? It gets crazier. So we know that he's on the Giants currently from 92 to 95 before he got his starting role. But during that time, the intermission, he was in a Mexican league as well in the offseason. And in that offseason, you can't find it on any references, but I did some digging. He won a championship in the Mexican league with a team called the Tomateros. This is him now, by the way. We'll get to that later. Like, literally, you can't find it anywhere. This is all the teams that he has on record. So the Tomateros are actually a very established team in the Mexican League, the Mexican Pacific League, actually, to be exact. They were founded in 1965. They have a ton of league championships, including right here, the 1995-96 season. That they won back-to-back championships. You go to their YouTube channel, and this is the only video I could find of JR anywhere, by the way. Right here, if you translate it into English, I don't speak Spanish, I apologize, but in our Throwback Thursday, we return in the 94-95 season and present to you the sample of Bam Bam J.R. Phillips. And by the way, he absolutely nukes that ball out of park, just saying. But this man right here, J.R. Phillips, he carries this jersey around with him so often because he's part of that 95 season championship. He was there for a little bit before he got called up to the majors, and he was part of that championship team. Absolutely insane. No stats, no nothing to prove it, but it's there. Like, he won the 95 championship in the 95-96 season for the Tomateros. Absolutely insane. So at the end of the day, before we get any further, he's a champion. Good for him. Let's get back on track to the boring stuff. After San Francisco, he went to Philadelphia. He played for the Phillies very soon after he was released in October of 96. But in March of 97, he ended up signing with his second longest tenured team, the Houston Astros, who will actually have a pretty funny story later on in this. He was again granted free agency For some reason, again, November, they picked him back up. He was then again granted free agency a year later after he played a full season with Houston. And then after that, he was signed with the Colorado Rockies, where he also played a full season, but he was then released in 99. Not a lot to talk about during those seasons. Like, he was decent, but he saw his last playing time in the majors with the Rockies. So that's why it's kind of interesting. After being released by the Rockies, about 4 months later, he gave it another shot to come back with the White Sox, and it didn't last very long because Houston came around and said, hey, man, we got some cash for your boy. His old friends in Houston, they have cash. Cash money. Chicago said, yes, please. They took him, and the Astros, not much longer, granted his release. Bro, like, what? I don't get it. And then here comes another old friend, right? Colorado, 2001. A whole year later, 2001, signs him as a free agent. Granted free agency in October. Oh, buddy. At this point, he's about mid-30s. He's 32, 33 years old. 2 years later, comes back to the Seattle Mariners. 2 years later, it's a comeback story, right? Wrong. Granted a release a couple months later. He is then signed by his old friends again in Houston another 2 years later. He did great, and he did it overseas. He did it wherever he had to. He did great. But a few months later, he was again released. Well, in the 2001 season, he was with the Hyundai Unicorns, which was his last professional team known, I guess. Why that is, considered known, I don't know. But they were in the KBO League in Korea. They won the championship in the KBO 4 times, 98, 2000, 2003, 2004, all of which he did not play in. He was there for the 2001 season, and that was it. And right here in front of us, you guys can go ahead and take a pause if you want, but these are all the teams that he played for in his time playing baseball. Mid-30s, he was done. He was done with Mexican stuff. He ended up coming back to the MLB for the minors. If you really think about it, you could consider J.R. Phillips a quadruple A player. He was good enough to play in the majors, just wasn't good enough for the teams that he was on to be a high platoon player. This is actually believed to be the championship picture from the Tomateros. You guys can see the logo on his hat, aligned to the cap insignia from this. But again, for some reason, the team's not in his history. This is the only current photo I could find of him besides the one that you guys saw in the jersey earlier. And JR is now 54 years old, has a son, and he's living his best life, it seems. But yeah, guys, you guys saw this picture earlier, but this is from 2022. This is the most recent picture I could find of J.R. Phillips from the Tomateros Facebook page. And yeah, this is it. That was the story of J.R. Phillips. If you guys did enjoy, please drop a like. I'd appreciate it, guys. Drop a follow. We'll be bringing more of these if it gets enough traction, and boom. See you guys.